Jungkook chases Taehyung backstage after a live performance. What he says next shatters everything Taehyung thought he knew. "Don't walk away from me, Taehyung, not after everything." Jungkook's voice cracked like thunder, ricocheting off the cold metal walls of the backstage corridor. The fluorescent lights above flickered with every step he took, boots slamming against concrete as he sprinted after the older man, his breath ragged, hands clenched, vision tunneled by betrayal. Taehyung didn't turn around. His silhouette, long and rigid beneath his black stage jacket, moved with purpose, shoulders tense, jaw locked. His hands still shaking from gripping the mic too hard just moments before. Fans were still screaming beyond the curtains, oblivious. The final VCR had just rolled. The encore had ended with fake smiles. But backstage, it was unraveling. Jungkook reached him just before the exit door. He yanked Taehyung by the wrist, spinning him around with more force than intended. Taehyung staggered back, stunned, and then their eyes met. "What the hell was that?" Jungkook hissed. Taehyung didn't blink. "You know what it was." "No." Jungkook's voice trembled. "No, I don't. That wasn't part of the plan. You were never supposed to say my name like that, like it disgusted you." "I improvised," Taehyung replied coldly, chest rising and falling rapidly. His voice was a strained whisper, like he was afraid someone might be listening, or like he wanted someone to. Jungkook stepped closer, fists at his sides. "You called me a puppet in front of a live audience." "It wasn't scripted," Taehyung shrugged. "But it was honest." Silence ballooned between them, thick and crushing. The backstage crew shuffled by in hurried steps, giving them wide berths, eyes averted. Everyone knew better than to interfere when the two youngest members of BTS were locked in a war of silence. It had happened before, but not like this. Not after a performance broadcast live to over 12 million viewers worldwide. Not after Taehyung turned a simple thank you speech into a thinly veiled attack. Jungkook's mouth opened, then closed. His throat bobbed as he swallowed something too bitter to speak. "You think I don't see what you're doing?" he finally said, voice lower now, almost defeated. "You act like I'm the one who left, like I'm the one who chose the spotlight over us, but you—" His words faltered. "You were the one who asked me to wait. And I waited, Tae. For years." Taehyung turned his face, but not before Jungkook saw the twitch in his eye, the way his control fractured just a little. "That was before I knew what the spotlight does to people," Taehyung muttered. "Before I realized you'd forget who we were the second cameras started rolling." Jungkook laughed bitterly. "You think I forgot? I tattooed the memory of us into every song I wrote for the last 3 years. Then maybe you should have used ink instead of fire," Taehyung snapped, stepping forward now. "Because all I hear is pain when your voice hits the chorus." They stood inches apart, sweat cooling, breaths heavy, years of resentment buzzing between them like exposed wires. "I wrote Eclipsed for you," Jungkook whispered. "You knew that. You heard the demo before anyone else. You helped me change the second verse." Taehyung's face twisted. "And then you took me out of the credits." Jungkook froze. The words hit like a gut punch. "I what?" "You erased me," Taehyung said, voice breaking for the first time, eyes glistening now under the harsh white lights. "You let your manager tell me it was cleaner without my name on it. You let them scrub me out like I was a stain on your legacy." "That's not true." Jungkook stepped back, shaking his head. "You're lying. I didn't know they did that." "Then you weren't looking close enough." Taehyung's voice cracked, and for the first time, his facade shattered. "Or maybe you didn't want to." The words echoed, and something in Jungkook's face broke. He stepped back again, breath hitching, hands rising to his head. No, I fought for that track. I fought to keep your verse in. I didn't know they removed your name, Tae. I swear to God." Taehyung's expression hardened through the wetness now running freely down his cheeks. "Do you even remember what you said to me that night in Busan?" Jungkook blinked fast. "Of course I do." "No, you don't," Taehyung whispered. "Because if you did, you wouldn't have let me watch the world fall in love with a song that used to be ours while pretending I had nothing to do with it." Jungkook's knees gave slightly as if the weight of it all hit him at once. The stage lights in the distance dimmed behind the curtain as the crew packed up. Only the cold, quiet space between them remained. Then Jungkook did something no one expected. He dropped to his knees, in front of the man he once called his muse, his brother, his home. "I didn't mean to erase you." Jungkook's voice was barely audible, choked with guilt. "I was just trying to survive." Taehyung stood frozen, and then he crumbled. His knees buckled, and he dropped beside Jungkook, not with anger, but with anguish. The backstage corridor fell into silence, broken only by the sound of two men crying for something that had long been broken, long before this night. No fans saw this. No cameras caught it. But in that unlit corner of the arena, history was rewriting itself, not in charts or headlines, but in trembling hands and the softest apology ever whispered beneath a breath that still remembered how to love. The room they were placed in afterward was eerily quiet. The staff had been instructed not to come in. The door was locked. The lights were dimmed. Taehyung sat on the black couch, back curved, elbows on his knees, face buried in his hands. Jungkook stood by the corner, pacing, hands tugging at the roots of his hair like the pain might make everything make sense. His eyes were red but dry now. He had cried. They both had. But the silence that followed the collapse was even more violent than any scream. "I thought we were past this," Jungkook finally said, the words slicing the stillness. "I thought you understood why I made those decisions." Taehyung raised his head slowly. His eyes were swollen, raw. "Do you actually believe that? That I understood? You said you forgave me." "I lied." Jungkook froze. His heart twisted. "You think forgiveness is something you say because the moment feels too heavy?" Taehyung stood now, chest heaving. "I said I forgave you because I was scared, because I didn't want to be the bitter one, the selfish one. But every time I saw your face in another interview pretending I was just part of the background noise, every time they asked about the solo album and you said you didn't collaborate with anyone this round, I died a little." "I didn't mean it like that." Jungkook's voice cracked. "They told me to keep it simple. I didn't want to explain things that were private." "Private?" Taehyung laughed, a bitter hollow sound. "You mean me. I was the secret. That's not what I meant. You called me your anchor in private, and a friend from the past in public. Do you hear yourself?" Jungkook slammed his fist against the metal paneling on the wall. The impact echoed sharply, but neither of them flinched. "You want the truth?" he said, voice shaking. "You were my everything, Tae. That's the f***ing problem. Every time I looked at you, I saw everything I gave up. The truth scared me, because if I admitted it, if I told the world, there would be nothing left to protect." Taehyung walked up to him now, slowly, like a storm approaching. "Then don't pretend you did it for me." Jungkook flinched. "I was ready," Taehyung whispered. "I told you back then. I didn't care if it ruined me. I just wanted us to be honest, to be seen. You were the one who hid. I was trying to protect you," Jungkook repeated. "No." Taehyung shook his head. "You were protecting your image." That landed like a gunshot. Jungkook stepped back. Taehyung followed. "You used to tell me that music wasn't worth it if it wasn't real. And then you let them turn you into someone scripted, someone polished. Someone who says all the right things until he's bleeding inside and no one notices." "I noticed," Jungkook snapped, face contorted. "I noticed every time you disappeared after a rehearsal. Every time your voice cracked in the booth and you pretended it was just fatigue. I noticed every time your smile didn't reach your eyes, but you never let me in. You always shut me out because I knew what you'd do. You'd try to fix me, and I didn't want to be something broken you had to save." The silence between them this time wasn't cold. It was blistering. Jungkook breathed hard, his chest rising and falling like he'd just run miles. Taehyung stood still now, arms crossed like a shield he hadn't dropped in years. "I was never trying to save you," Jungkook finally said. "I just didn't want to lose you." Taehyung blinked. Slowly. "You lost me the moment you stopped fighting for me." Jungkook's shoulders dropped, like the weight finally became too much. He turned away, walked a few steps, then spun around with eyes full of desperation. "Then, why did you come tonight? Why did you agree to perform with me again? After everything?" Taehyung looked away. "You think I came for you?" he asked softly. "I came for closure." That word, closure. It rang like a warning bell. "So that's it?" Jungkook whispered. "Tonight was your goodbye?" Taehyung didn't answer, but the way his eyes fell, the way his hands tightened at his sides, it was enough. Jungkook stumbled back like he'd been hit. His mouth opened, no sound coming out. And then he started laughing, a laugh that was hollow and terrifying. "You can't do this," he said finally. "You can't rewrite everything we've been through like it was a mistake." "I'm not rewriting it," Taehyung's voice trembled. "I'm ending it." And then he walked past him. Jungkook's body turned on instinct. He grabbed Taehyung's arm, pulling him back with a grip that was almost too tight. "You don't get to walk away again." Taehyung looked down at Jungkook's hand, then up into his eyes. His voice came out flat. "And you don't get to control how this ends." Their breaths clashed. Their memories clawed at the air between them. Then, without warning, Jungkook pulled him in and hugged him. Tight, desperate, violent with need. Taehyung's fist slammed into Jungkook's back. Once, twice, but then stopped. He stood frozen, arms dangling by his side. Heart thundering in his chest like it was trying to escape his ribs. "I don't care if you hate me," Jungkook whispered into his ear, his voice soaked in grief. "But don't pretend like this doesn't still mean something." Taehyung's throat clenched. His lips parted to speak, but nothing came. The hug remained unreturned, but neither did he push Jungkook away. That was enough. For now. Outside the room, the world kept spinning. The staff prepared for press statements. Twitter exploded with theories about the tension between the two idols. Headlines speculated. Fans speculated harder. But inside this dim-lit chamber, two boys stood with history in their lungs, regrets in their arms, and something unnamed still pulsing beneath their skin, too broken to be called love, too real to be forgotten. "You told them?" Taehyung's voice was low, hollow, but it shook the air like a war drum. His back was to Jungkook, his body still facing the dressing room mirror, fingers trembling just above the table surface, inches from the half-drunk bottle of water he'd picked up and never sipped. Jungkook, standing behind him, didn't answer. The silence that followed wasn't absence, it was accusation, cold, unforgiving, and sharp enough to draw blood. Taehyung slowly turned, the reflection in the mirror catching his eyes before Jungkook did. What stared back at him wasn't a performer. It wasn't even a friend. It was a betrayed man standing in the ruins of a lie he didn't know had already been exposed. "You told them about Busan, didn't you?" Taehyung stepped forward, his voice rising with every syllable. "That's why the label's threatening me. That's why I got pulled into that pathetic PR meeting last week with their tone-deaf questions and their fake concern. I didn't mean for it to get out," Jungkook finally said, voice tight, restrained, like he was holding something back. Guilt, maybe, or rage. "I only told Namjoon. He asked me why you were withdrawing from the new unit debut. I didn't think—" "You didn't think," Taehyung snapped, cutting him off. "You never do. You just speak and trust that your name will clean up the mess. That's not fair. No, what's not fair is you unloading our private history to a group of executives who care more about fan reaction than our mental health. I trusted Namjoon. You should have trusted me." The room quaked with that sentence. Jungkook blinked slowly, his throat visibly tightening, jaw twitching, as if resisting the urge to defend himself with half-truths and fragile excuses. "I needed to explain why you left the studio halfway through recording," Jungkook said, stepping forward. "They were blaming it on laziness, on ego. I had to tell them the truth." "No, Jungkook," Taehyung growled. "You told them your truth." The accusation struck deeper than any scream. Jungkook's expression cracked for a moment, brows furrowing as his mouth opened, then faltered. "I told them what happened that night because I thought it would protect you." Jungkook tried again, quieter now. You thought exposing my breakdown would earn me sympathy?" Taehyung's eyes glinted with disgust. "Or did it make you look more heroic? The selfless member who keeps going while the other one collapses behind the scenes." "Don't twist this into some narcissistic fantasy," Jungkook snapped, voice suddenly sharp, eyes narrowing. "I carried your pain for years. I stayed silent when you ghosted producers, when you skipped rehearsals, when you froze during recordings and left me to improvise everything. I never blamed you. Never. But I was drowning too. And you never looked back." Taehyung took 2 dangerous steps forward. "And yet somehow, you still managed to paint yourself as the one who suffered more. You think I wanted this attention? You think I enjoy being the poster boy while everyone speculates what's wrong with you?" Jungkook's voice shook now, not from anger but from the weight of finally saying what he'd buried. "Do you know how many nights I've stayed up rewriting lines just to make sure no one notices the silence where your voice should have been?" Taehyung's lips parted, something breaking behind his gaze. "I wanted you on that track," Jungkook continued, softer but fiercer. "Every note sounded wrong without you. But you didn't show up. You didn't answer my messages. I begged them to give you more time, and they told me I needed to choose between the deadline and the dream. You should have chosen me. I did, Jungkook whispered. But they buried it. The air thickened. Somewhere in the hallway, distant laughter could be heard, staff members finishing up, maybe celebrating the end of the shoot. It was so far removed from the storm unraveling inside this dressing room that it sounded unreal, like audio from another world. Taehyung leaned against the wall, arms crossed now, but more to hold himself together than to challenge. He inhaled slowly, fingers twitching, voice dropping into a tremble he couldn't disguise anymore. They told me I was too unstable to be part of the release, that I'd damage the brand if I showed up on screen looking like I'd been crying. Jungkook's shoulders sagged. I didn't know that. Because they protect you, Jungkook. You're marketable. You're clean. You're safe. Taehyung scoffed. Me? I'm a risk. You're not, Jungkook said with so much intensity it startled them both. You're not a risk. You're the reason I got into music in the first place. Taehyung closed his eyes, pained. Then why does it always feel like I'm the price you have to pay to succeed? Jungkook stepped closer again, his voice unraveling like silk cut with razors. Because they told me to choose. Taehyung's eyes snapped open. They said I could have the comeback of a lifetime, but I had to stop waiting for ghosts. Jungkook's mouth twisted in disgust at the memory. Their words, not mine. And you agreed. I hesitated, Jungkook said, stepping forward again. And they knew. They saw it. That's why they pushed you out without telling me. They knew I'd never sign off on it unless they made it look like your choice. Taehyung laughed under his breath. So now I'm a ghost. A liability. You were never a liability to me, but I was to them. And you stayed. Jungkook looked like someone stabbed him. I'm still here, he said weakly. Even now. Taehyung looked at him. Truly looked for the first time in months. Jungkook's face had matured. There were darker shadows under his eyes now. More silence between his words. He didn't look like the boy Taehyung once wrote lyrics with at 3 a.m. in a half-lit dorm room. He looked like a man who had been trained to be loved by millions, but had forgotten how to be loved by one. Being here isn't the same as fighting for me, Taehyung finally said. Jungkook didn't argue. He couldn't. Because it was true. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was mourning, like they were both standing over the grave of something beautiful that had been slaughtered slowly by decisions too complex to reverse and too painful to face. I don't want to hate you, Taehyung finally whispered, voice brittle. Then don't, Jungkook whispered back. It's not that simple. I know. Taehyung pushed off the wall, walked to the door, and paused before reaching for the handle. You promised me this would stay between us, he said without turning around. I broke that promise, Jungkook replied. But not because I stopped caring. Because I didn't know how else to keep you safe. Taehyung nodded once. Without a word, he walked out. Jungkook stood alone. The lights in the dressing room hummed. The silence this time wasn't explosive or accusing. It was the echo of a goodbye that hadn't been said out loud but had already taken root. The next time they saw each other, it wasn't planned. Taehyung wasn't supposed to be at the label meeting. Jungkook had assumed he'd bowed out again. Management had sent a formal notice saying only the current promotion team would attend. But when Jungkook stepped into the high-rise conference room with its pristine glass windows and the suffocating echo of quiet tension, Taehyung was already sitting there. He didn't look up. His hair was brushed back neatly, his black shirt pressed without a wrinkle, but his eyes, those were unreadable, guarded. Jungkook halted mid-step, his fingers twitching, as if deciding whether to stay or walk out. Too late. Taehyung finally lifted his gaze, meeting Jungkook's with a stillness so calm it burned. The director cleared his throat, oblivious to or perhaps deliberately ignoring the air thick with personal history between the two idols. Let's begin. There have been questions about the authenticity of the songwriting credits for Eclipsed. A journalist has threatened to publish a piece alleging ghostwriting and uncredited contribution. Jungkook didn't move. Taehyung leaned forward, fingers steepled under his chin. And what did you tell them? He asked, tone laced with venom wrapped in velvet. We told them the official credits speak for themselves, the director replied quickly. But they're asking for internal voice notes and early demo files as proof. We need to discuss how to frame the narrative. Jungkook's jaw clenched. His voice came out quiet. Frame? The director blinked. It's standard. We protect the public image. We shape the truth into something that aligns with our current promotional. So you're asking me to lie again? Jungkook cut in, voice sharper now, each word falling like ice. No one said lie, the man tried. You're asking me to pretend Taehyung never had a hand in writing the bridge. That he wasn't there the night I recorded the final demo. That his melody line wasn't the one we built the entire second verse around. Jungkook's tone now shimmered with contained fury. That's not framing. That's erasing. Taehyung didn't speak. His eyes remained locked on Jungkook, and in that gaze, there was something unreadable fury, sadness, perhaps just exhaustion. The director shifted uncomfortably. We're saying the final version was your vocal direction. You made the executive changes. I didn't remove his name. Jungkook snapped. I never approved that. Now Taehyung spoke. Then who did? Jungkook turned to him. I didn't even know your name was gone from the publishing rights until you told me backstage. And you didn't fix it. I tried, Jungkook exploded, standing. I went to the legal team. They said it was too late. That the paperwork had already been finalized for distribution and pulling it back would jeopardize the rollout schedule. Then you should have pulled the track. Everyone in the room froze. Even Jungkook. Taehyung stood slowly, his voice a blade wrapped in velvet. You should have pulled the damn song. If it really meant something. If I really meant something. But instead, you let them scrub my name and sell the story that it was your rawest, most personal work. It was personal, Jungkook said, helpless. I wrote it for you. Then you should have fought harder for me. Taehyung's voice cracked. A heavy silence descended. Jungkook looked at the executives, then back at Taehyung. His breathing was uneven now. What do you want me to do? Taehyung stared at him for a long moment. Tell the truth. The director stepped in. That's not... Shut up, Taehyung snapped, eyes never leaving Jungkook. You owe me the truth, not in DMs, not in whispered backstage apologies, but to the people who think that song was just yours. Jungkook didn't look away. He nodded. I'll do it. The room broke into chaos. Executives stood, hands flailing, voices rising in protest. Contracts, reputation, timing, billboard, foreign markets. Do you realize what kind of backlash this could cause? One of them hissed. You look like a liar. You look like you stole a song. Jungkook turned slowly to the man. Then maybe I deserve it. Taehyung blinked. Later that night, when the dust had settled and the meeting had ended in unresolved tension, Jungkook found himself sitting alone in the practice room where they had first rehearsed the choreography for Eclipsed. The mirrors stretched wide in front of him, and he could barely look at himself. He heard the door open. He didn't turn. Taehyung sat beside him. The silence wasn't cold this time. It was shared. You really meant it? Taehyung asked, staring at the floor. Jungkook nodded. I'll tell them everything. I'll go live. Say your name. Play the early demo. I'll burn the fake story down if I have to. Taehyung didn't answer right away. I don't want you to be ruined. I'm already ruined if I have to lie to stay loved. Taehyung turned to him. Something trembled in his voice. Why did you let them take my name off in the first place? Jungkook's eyes finally met his. I was scared they'd use you as a weapon against me. Taehyung frowned. What does that mean? Jungkook's voice dropped to a whisper. They said if I didn't sign the revised credits, they'd leak the videos from Busan. Taehyung's blood ran cold. The hotel lobby footage. You, collapsing, crying. Jungkook continued, his voice hollow. They said it would damage the brand, that fans would call you unstable, that it would become another trending scandal. You should have told me, Taehyung breathed. They made me choose. Jungkook whispered, pain cutting through every word. I thought I was protecting you, but I see now. I was protecting their version of you. Taehyung looked away. Neither of them spoke for a long time. But this time, when Jungkook reached out, Taehyung didn't flinch. He didn't retreat. Their hands met in the middle of that mirrored room, fingers shaky, but not letting go. The live broadcast had barely ended when chaos erupted backstage. Cameras still being packed up, tech crews shouting across the darkened stage, interns scrambling to return borrowed wardrobe pieces. None of them noticed that Jungkook had thrown his in-ear monitors across the floor the second the lights dimmed. The faint echo of plastic cracking against concrete barely masked the thunder in his chest. He moved fast, almost blindly, ignoring the startled stares of staff as he pushed through a back hallway that led to the private green room, his fists clenched tighter with each step. His heart wasn't just pounding, it was threatening to escape. Because tonight, Taehyung had crossed a line. And Jungkook had no idea whether to scream or break down. The door to the green room was slightly ajar. He didn't knock. He pushed it open with force, the sound startling the stylist, who immediately fled the room, reading the tension in the air like smoke in a burning house. Taehyung didn't flinch. He was sitting on the armrest of the leather couch, scrolling casually through his phone like nothing had happened. But his jaw was locked, his breathing shallow, his composure was a mask. And Jungkook knew that mask too well. Jungkook's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Why would you do that?" Taehyung didn't look up. "Do what?" "Don't play dumb," Jungkook growled. "You knew we were live. You knew millions of people were watching. And you still said it." Taehyung slowly lowered his phone, finally meeting Jungkook's eyes. "I told the truth. You said we weren't speaking because I couldn't handle reality." "I was being generous," Taehyung replied coolly. "I could have said worse." Jungkook's hands curled into fists. "You humiliated me." Taehyung stood now, voice rising. "You humiliated yourself. I just gave it context." Jungkook's eyes were blazing. "You looked into that camera and made it seem like I'm delusional, like I'm obsessed, like I'm still chasing something that doesn't exist." "Are you saying it does still exist?" Taehyung shot back, stepping forward. Jungkook didn't respond. His mouth twitched. His body froze. Taehyung's expression darkened. "Exactly. You're not being fair," Jungkook said, quieter now. "You're twisting everything for the narrative. That's not who you are." "Oh, but that is who I've become," Taehyung said bitterly. "Because being soft got me erased from your story. Being quiet got me labeled unstable. Being loyal got me turned into a ghost." "I never asked you to be silent," Jungkook snapped. "No, you just never listened when I spoke." Jungkook's voice cracked. "That's not true. You always chose the career over the truth," Taehyung continued, voice trembling. "Over me. Over us." Jungkook stepped closer. Their faces were inches apart now. His voice dropped, raw and ragged. "I wanted both. I fought for both. But they made me pick a version of myself that didn't include you, and I was too scared to burn it all down." Taehyung stared at him. "So you'd rather destroy yourself than admit you miss me?" "I never stopped missing you," Jungkook whispered. "But missing you doesn't bring you back." Taehyung's breath caught, and then came the twist neither of them expected. A knock at the door. Jungkook turned, startled. A junior staff member stepped in nervously, holding a phone. Sorry to interrupt. This is urgent." "There's been a leak." Taehyung's eyes narrowed. "What kind of leak?" The staff member gulped. "A file from 3 years ago. An old demo. It's you two. Arguing." In the studio, Jungkook's face drained of color. Taehyung looked thunderous. "What studio?" "Company A during the parallel sessions. Someone uploaded the audio to a private fan forum. It's already trending." Jungkook staggered back, as if physically hit. That session. That night. The one where Taehyung had nearly walked out on the entire group after they buried his solo draft. The one where Jungkook shouted at him to grow up, and Taehyung told him to keep being their golden robot. The argument had never been resolved. That night, Taehyung disappeared for 48 hours. Jungkook slept on the floor of the studio, replaying the conversation over and over. And now, the world was about to hear it. "Get me that file," Jungkook said darkly to the staffer. "Now." As the door slammed shut, Taehyung turned to Jungkook, something unreadable flashing across his face. "Who still had that file?" he asked. Jungkook's mouth was a tight line. "Only 2 people. Me and the head engineer." "Then someone wants us buried," Taehyung said. "Or someone wants the truth out." Taehyung stepped back, arms crossed. "You said you were ready to tell the truth. This is the universe calling your bluff." Jungkook looked sick. "Do you know what happens if they hear the part where I say I never want to see you again?" he asked, almost to himself. Taehyung's voice was low. "Do you know what happens if they hear the part where I said I loved you, but couldn't do this anymore?" Silence. Then Jungkook sat down, burying his face in his hands. "It's over," he muttered. Taehyung stood still, watching him unravel. "No," he said finally. "It's just starting." Jungkook looked up. Taehyung's eyes were blazing now, but not with rage, with something else. A decision. A shift. "Let them hear it," Taehyung said. "Are you serious?" Taehyung nodded. "Let them hear the fight. Let them hear why we broke, Why we bled for songs that erased one of us every time. Jungkook looked at him like he was seeing him for the first time again. "You're really not afraid anymore," he said. "I'm done being afraid," Taehyung replied. "Because the truth? The truth is the only thing I still have left." The air in the conference room was thick, the kind of heavy that made every breath feel like inhaling smoke. Outside the walls, the world was already devouring the leak, hashtags flooding every timeline, fans dissecting every second of that studio recording from 3 years ago. The argument, the betrayal, the word love buried inside that chaotic audio, it was all out there now, and nothing could take it back. Jungkook sat at the end of the long table, shoulders tense, knuckles pale from gripping the armrest too hard. He hadn't slept. His phone had exploded with calls from PR, legal, members, friends he hadn't heard from in years. But none of that mattered, not compared to the way Taehyung was looking at him now from across the room. Calm, controlled, but lethal. He wore a black blazer, unbuttoned, the collar slightly askew, as if he'd rushed to get here. But his eyes, they burned steady. No screaming, no visible fury, just a dangerous quiet. "So," Taehyung said finally, leaning back in the chair, "you ready to say what you really think? Or do I have to wait for your press statement like everyone else?" Jungkook exhaled slowly through his nose. "I didn't leak it. I didn't say you did," Taehyung replied, voice smooth, cold. "But let's be honest, Jungkook. You benefited from it. They cut it down to make me look like the bitter ex and you the heartbroken golden boy." Jungkook flinched. He hated that word. Golden boy. It was a label that had wrapped itself around his throat like a noose since he was 16. "That's not fair," Jungkook muttered. "I didn't ask for this." "You didn't have to," Taehyung said, leaning forward. "It's always been this way. You breathe, and they make it look noble. I breathe, and they call it rebellion." The legal team at the table shifted uncomfortably, glancing at one another, unsure whether to step in or stay out of the storm brewing between them. One of the lawyers cleared his throat. "If we can—" "Shut up," Jungkook snapped without even looking at him. Taehyung smirked without humor. "So you do have a spine when it's convenient." Jungkook's hand slammed the table. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. "Stop twisting everything I say!" "Then say something that isn't easy to twist," Taehyung shot back. "Say it to me, not through PR. Not in those pretty little lines you've been trained to say since debut." Jungkook pushed up from his chair, walking around the table until he stood directly in front of him. "You think I don't regret what happened? You think I don't replay that night in my head every time I step into a studio?" "You regret getting caught," Taehyung said softly, like a blade sliding into skin. Jungkook's breathing turned uneven. "I regret everything." "Then why didn't you fight?" "Because I didn't know how," Jungkook hissed. "Because every time I tried, they threatened to destroy everything. My songs, my future, and you. I could have handled it." "No," Jungkook said sharply. "You think you could have, but you don't know what they said behind those closed doors." Taehyung rose now, their height almost matching, their breaths mingling in the narrow space between them. "Then tell me." Jungkook stared at him, eyes burning, voice low. "They said you'd drag me down, that you were unstable, that loving you was a liability." The silence that followed was instant and violent. Taehyung's face didn't move, but his eyes flickered with something raw, hurt so old it had fossilized into anger. "And you believed them? I was 23, Tae. I didn't know who to believe." "You should have believed me," Taehyung said, voice trembling now. "You should have believed us." Jungkook looked away, guilt carving sharp lines into his features.
"I thought I was protecting you."
"No," Taehyung whispered, stepping closer until their foreheads nearly touched. "You were protecting yourself." And suddenly, it wasn't just a conversation. It was the sound of something snapping. All the unspoken words, the bruises they never showed, the years of smiling for cameras while rotting behind the curtains, it all came crashing to the surface. "I hate you for making me feel like I was the problem," Taehyung whispered, his voice cracking in the quiet. "Like I was the storm that ruined your perfect sky. I never saw you as the problem." Jungkook shot back, voice breaking too. "I saw you as the reason. Then why did you hide me?" Jungkook's throat closed. No answer came. Not the kind Taehyung needed. Their breaths were unsteady. The legal team pretended not to hear, but every syllable was etched into the room like a scar. Finally, Taehyung stepped back, his hands shaking. his voice sharp. You're going to stand in front of the cameras and tell them the truth. Not your polished version. The truth. That you didn't write that bridge alone. That I was there. That we built it together. I already said I would. No, Taehyung hissed. You said it to me. I want to hear you say it to the world. Jungkook exhaled, fists trembling. Then I'll do it. Taehyung tilted his head, eyes narrowing. Not because I asked. Jungkook met his gaze. Because I should have done it years ago. For the first time, Taehyung's face faltered. A fraction of softness slipped through, but it vanished as fast as it came. The lawyer shifted again, voice trembling slightly. If you two go public with this, you'll be breaking multiple clauses. There will be, Jungkook turned on him. There will be truth. And I can live with that. Taehyung watched him carefully, suspicious, torn between fury and something quieter that still refused to die. You think the truth will fix us? No, Jungkook said softly. But it might stop me from hating myself. The silence that followed was not empty. It was charged, alive, electric. Years of emotion collided in that room, everything they had buried clawing its way out between their ragged breaths. Taehyung finally walked toward the door. His voice, when it came, was low but firm. This time, Jungkook, I won't wait for you to choose me. If you say it for yourself. He left without looking back. Jungkook stood there alone, chest heaving, his hands pressed against the table like he was trying to hold the world together before it finally shattered. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like the golden boy. He just felt human, broken, exposed, and ready to set everything on fire. The live stream notification dropped like a bomb. Armies were already in frenzy, forums crashing, trending tags flipping by the second. But when Jungkook's face appeared unannounced, raw and unfiltered, without makeup, without PR, without a script, the world collectively held its breath. His hair was still wet. The studio lights were dim behind him, casting long shadows across the wall. His hands were clasped tightly in front of him, knuckles white, and for a full 30 seconds, he said nothing, just stared. Then finally, he spoke. I know the audio that leaked hurt a lot of people, he said, voice quiet but steady. And I know it hurt someone who didn't deserve to be hurt again. He exhaled slowly, like the air was heavy in his lungs. I haven't been honest. Not with you. Not with him. Not with myself. The chat exploded, but Jungkook didn't look at it. I didn't write Eclipsed alone, he continued. I never claimed I did, but I also didn't stop anyone from building that lie around me. And for that, I'm sorry. He paused, his throat tightening. Taehyung wrote the bridge. He helped shape the melody. His voice was the one in my head when I recorded that final version. And if you think it sounds like I'm singing to someone, it's because I was. The silence that followed was suffocating. I loved him, Jungkook said. No tremble, no hesitation, no filters. Not I love him. Not past tense as a mask for present pain, but not denial either. Just the truth, like he'd promised. And I failed him. Then the screen went black. No outro, no farewell, no music, just silence. And within minutes, the entire world was on fire. The press erupted. Headlines screamed betrayal, heartbreak, raw confession. Twitter melted, fans split. Articles surfaced from every angle, some defending him, others accusing him of deflection, manipulation, image recovery. But none of them mattered more than one notification. Taehyung started a live stream. It wasn't in a studio. It wasn't scheduled. He was sitting in the passenger seat of a car, parked somewhere quiet. City lights glowed behind the window, but his face was dimly lit by the screen. His expression wasn't angry. It wasn't soft either. It was focused, like he'd waited 3 years for this moment. So, he began, his voice dry. He finally said it. He gave a small nod to no one, then looked down. I wasn't going to respond. I didn't plan to. I thought maybe I could just let it go. A pause, but he said my name. His eyes flickered up. He said my name like it meant something again. He leaned back into the seat. I was angry when the leak happened. I was furious, because I didn't want the world to see us through a broken lens. But maybe that's the only way to see us now. He rubbed a hand over his face. I don't want to be a martyr. I don't want pity. I just want peace. Then came the silence again, But Taehyung's silence wasn't emptiness. It was thick with memories, with things unspoken. I never stopped loving him either, he said finally. And the stream ended. It was less than 4 minutes, but it ruptured the internet. Back in the label building, Jungkook stood in the hallway outside the executive offices, phone in hand, shaking. He had just watched the entire stream, every second, every word, and he didn't move for a long time. Until Taehyung's voice echoed in his head again. He said my name like it meant something again. And that was when Jungkook ran. Again, down the stairs, past the lobby, ignoring the calls of the assistants shouting after him. Out into the cold Seoul night where the wind felt like electricity against his skin. He didn't know where Taehyung was. He just ran because it was too much, too loud, too real. The words, the weight of it, the years they had spent swallowing grief in silence, now broadcast to millions. But then his phone rang. Taehyung's name. Jungkook stopped moving. He stared at the screen, heart in his throat. Then he answered. I didn't say it for sympathy, Jungkook said before Taehyung could speak. I know. I said it because I should have screamed it 3 years ago. I know, Taehyung replied. Silence again. But this time it didn't hurt. I don't know what happens next, Jungkook said, breathless. I just know I can't go back to pretending we never existed. Taehyung didn't speak for a moment. Then he said softly, come to the place where we wrote our first demo. Jungkook closed his eyes. That place, the rooftop of the old studio. The forgotten corner where they once recorded harmonies under a dying bulb. The night it rained and Taehyung had draped a jacket over both their heads and said, don't forget this moment. I'll be there, Jungkook said. The line went dead. An hour later, he stood on that rooftop again. Taehyung was already there, hands in his pockets, wind ruffling his hair. He didn't speak when Jungkook approached. He didn't move. I didn't come to fix it, Jungkook said, stopping in front of him. I came to admit I broke it. Taehyung looked at him, long and slow. Do you still write songs about me? All of them, Jungkook whispered. Taehyung's eyes didn't leave his. Then stop writing endings without me in them. The rooftop fell silent again, but not empty. Because this time, they were no longer standing on opposite sides of a story. They were rewriting it together. Not for headlines, not for redemption, but for themselves. The rooftop was quiet now. They hadn't spoken in several minutes. They just stood there, side by side, letting the cold wind press against their skin like punishment. Neither of them looked away from the skyline. Seoul sparkled below them, glittering and distant, as if the city itself didn't dare come any closer to what was unfolding above. Taehyung broke the silence first. So what now? His voice was low, frayed at the edges. You said it. I said it. The world's lost its mind. But what the hell does that fix? Jungkook didn't answer right away. He just pressed his fingers into the rusted railing, tightening his grip until his knuckles went pale. I don't know, he admitted. I thought it would feel like a release. But it doesn't. It feels like I've just opened the wound again. Taehyung turned to him. You did open the wound again. Jungkook nodded. Then bleed with me. Taehyung's lips parted, but no words came. The wind moved his hair gently. The rawness in his eyes wasn't just pain, it was confusion, exhaustion, maybe even hope, buried so deep it barely knew how to breathe anymore. I didn't say all those things for attention, Jungkook said, quieter now. I said them because I couldn't carry them alone anymore. You carried them because you never let me help, Taehyung replied. Every time I tried, you pulled back. Every time I got too close, you put up a wall made of press releases and fake smiles. Jungkook looked at him then, sharply. And you think you didn't? Taehyung's eyes flared. You were the one who stopped showing up. Who skipped the rehearsals? Who left me on red? Who said, and I quote, don't contact me unless it's work. Do you even remember saying that? Taehyung looked down. I do. Then don't act like I was the only one who pushed, Jungkook said, the pain cracking through every syllable. We broke this together. Taehyung's voice dropped to a whisper. I pushed because I couldn't stand seeing you become something I didn't recognize. I became what I had to, Jungkook snapped. To survive. To keep everything from falling apart. Everything did fall apart, Jungkook. Taehyung stepped forward now. Fists clenched, voice rising. You kept chasing perfection while I was falling apart behind the scenes, screaming into microphones that wouldn't record me. I watched you win awards for songs we wrote in the dark together, and I had to sit in silence while the world clapped for something that used to be ours. You think I didn't feel that? Jungkook's voice broke open. You think I didn't die every time I looked at the trophy and remembered the bridge you wrote? Every time I sang your harmony alone in an empty booth? Taehyung shook his head. You looked fine on stage. That's the point, Jungkook shouted. I looked fine. I pretended to be fine. I was never fine. The words fell like a scream that had been waiting for years. Taehyung's breath hitched, and something deep in his expression fractured. Then why didn't you come back to me? He asked, softer now, like it physically hurt to say it. After the press cooled down, after the contracts were signed, after the fans moved on, why didn't you just come home? Jungkook blinked at him, startled by the word. Home. That's what we were, Taehyung whispered. You were mine, and I was yours, even when it was messy, even when it hurt. Jungkook stepped closer. So close, their shoulders nearly touched. You think I didn't want to? I used to get as far as your door and turn back because I knew. I knew if you opened it, I'd never be able to let you go again, and I wasn't sure you'd still want me. Taehyung didn't speak. His eyes shimmered in the faint rooftop light. And then, finally, he exhaled. I waited for you. Jungkook looked away. I know. They stood like that again, close, trembling, unable to touch, but unable to walk away. Then, unexpectedly, Taehyung pulled something from his coat pocket. A folded piece of paper. Jungkook frowned. What's that? Taehyung handed it to him, slowly. I wrote this the night before your solo debut. I was going to give it to you after your stage. But I didn't think you'd want to hear from me. Jungkook unfolded the note. It was handwritten, ink smudged in places like it had been crumpled and smoothed a dozen times. Taehyung's handwriting slanted, elegant, unmistakably his. It read, I watched you rehearse from the balcony today. You didn't know I was there. You looked beautiful, not because of the lighting or the song, but because you looked like you'd finally become everything you dreamed of. I'm proud of you, even if I'm not in the dream anymore. Jungkook stared at the words, his fingers trembling. You were always in the dream, he said, voice tight. Even when I was too much of a coward to say it. Taehyung looked away, blinking quickly. I didn't write it to guilt you, he said. I wrote it because I didn't want your success to feel lonely. Jungkook folded the note, tucked it into his pocket. It was always lonely, he whispered. Without you, every victory felt hollow. They stood in the silence that followed, both of them stripped of everything but truth. Then, slowly, Jungkook turned to face him fully. Come to the studio with me, he said. Now. Taehyung blinked. What? No labels, no contracts, just you and me. Like before, one mic, one song, no ghostwriters, no audience, just us. Taehyung hesitated, but only for a moment. Then he nodded. Minutes later, they stood in the small side room of the old building they once called home. Dust clung to the walls. The equipment was outdated. But the piano still worked. And the silence felt familiar. Jungkook sat at the keyboard. Taehyung pulled up a second chair. They didn't speak. They didn't have to. Jungkook started playing a melody, soft, haunting. Taehyung picked up the notebook beside him and started writing. This time, there was no audience to impress, no narrative to protect, no script, just pain and love, and a chance to finally finish the song they were never allowed to complete. Together. The old studio walls couldn't hold them anymore. They tried, God knows they tried, but within 48 hours of that midnight session, everything they wrote together in secret was already being dissected. Somehow, someone had leaked the scratch vocals, not the finished track, just the raw files. Taehyung's voice cracked in the second chorus. Jungkook missed a note on the bridge. But it was real and viral. It trended within minutes under a name neither of them had chosen. Taekook, the unreleased confession. They hadn't even given the song a title yet. Taehyung stormed into the label the next morning with fire in his eyes, ignoring every assistant trying to intercept him. Jungkook was already in the conference room, waiting. He stood as Taehyung entered, but Taehyung raised a hand to stop him. Don't you dare try to soften this with an apology. I didn't leak it, Jungkook said, calm but visibly shaken. Taehyung's voice cut like glass. Then how the hell did it get out? I don't know, You recorded it using your equipment on your server. I encrypted everything. Well, someone cracked it. The room was empty except for them. Management hadn't arrived yet, but security was clearly lingering outside the doors. Taehyung stepped closer, his chest rising and falling with each sharp breath. I trusted you. You think I wanted this? Jungkook snapped. I've been drowning in interviews, being asked if this is my coming out ballad or some PR stunt. They're using it against both of us. They're using me, Taehyung corrected. They're dragging me. Again, that's not fair. No, Taehyung growled. What's not fair is that you always get to be the wounded poet while I'm the dramatic storm cloud. You cry in a song and people fall in love. I cry in real life and they call it a breakdown. I never told them to say that. But you never corrected them either, Taehyung spat. You watched the headlines paint me as unstable, jealous, obsessive. You let them write your redemption arc on my ashes. Jungkook recoiled as if slapped. You really believe that? I don't have to believe it. I lived it. Jungkook's voice rose, finally breaking. I defended you in every meeting. I refused endorsements that asked me to distance myself from you. I lost sponsors. I lost money. I lost years of momentum for protecting something you'd already given up on. You think this was about money? Taehyung barked. I gave up my image, my safety, my sanity. I kept quiet while you bloomed, because I thought silence was love. I thought protecting your shine meant dimming mine. Jungkook's voice cracked into a whisper. I never asked you to do that, but you never stopped me. The room fell into a paralyzing quiet. Their breaths were jagged, their eyes locked. Every memory of what they used to be pressed against the glass of that moment. You want the truth? Taehyung asked, voice low, trembling. Jungkook didn't respond. Taehyung took one step closer, anger leaking from every syllable. You're not afraid of losing me. You're afraid of being the reason I lose everything else. You love me, but only when it's quiet, only when no one's watching. Jungkook's fists clenched. That's not true. Taehyung raised his voice. Then prove it. Jungkook stepped forward, not in anger, but in collapse. You want proof? I haven't written a song alone in 2 years. I can't. Everything sounds like you. Every damn lyric ends up with your name under it, even if I don't write it down. You think that's enough? Taehyung's voice broke. You think pain makes it romantic? You think suffering makes it noble? Jungkook's eyes burned. I think the world was never going to make space for us, and we let that fact decide our ending. Taehyung turned away, staring at the dark glass window. Outside, Seoul was loud. Beautiful. Ignorant, he whispered. I hate that I still want to believe you. Jungkook came up behind him, quiet, breathing slow. Then believe me now. Taehyung turned, slowly. And what are you going to do that's different? Jungkook didn't hesitate. I'm going to play the song live. No edits, no backing track, just us. Taehyung stared, stunned. You can't be serious. I am. They'll kill the comeback. Let them. They'll call it a scandal. They already have. Taehyung hesitated. And what about the ones who call it disgusting? Jungkook's voice was steady. They were never ours to begin with. Silence stretched between them again. Not hostile this time. Not even sad. Just honest. Jungkook reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, showing Taehyung a text thread. At the bottom, a sent message to his manager. Release the original vocals. I'm going live Sunday night. No edits, no cuts. Taehyung gets full credit. Taehyung stared at the screen, then at Jungkook, then down. When he looked back up, his eyes were red but clear. Don't do this for me, he said. I'm doing it for us, Jungkook replied. Taehyung exhaled. Then I'll be there. And for the first time in what felt like years, the space between them didn't ache. It breathed. The countdown began with the world watching. Millions of eyes glued to the live stream link Jungkook posted without explanation. No teaser, no announcement. Just a time, a date, and a caption that read, "No more silence, no more edits." The interface showed the timer tick down. The number of waiting viewers climbed by the tens of thousands every minute. Fan threads went berserk. Industry insiders panicked. Managers sent desperate emails. Lawyers scrambled behind closed doors. But nothing could stop what was coming. When the screen finally faded in, it didn't show a polished set or stage. It showed 2 microphones, 2 stools, 1 piano, and them. Jungkook on the left, clad in simple black. Taehyung on the right, eyes dark, calm, unreadable. They didn't speak at first, didn't smile, didn't wave. They just looked at each other, and that was enough to split the air. Then Jungkook leaned forward, adjusting the mic. His voice, when it came, was raw and close, like a whisper meant only for one person and yet heard by the entire planet. "This song was never meant for the charts," he said. "It wasn't written for award shows or albums. It was written because I didn't know how else to apologize." He looked at Taehyung, and because I didn't want to forget what it felt like when we still believed we were unbreakable. Taehyung swallowed hard, the camera catching the faint tremble in his fingers as he reached up to adjust his earpiece. Then he leaned in too. "I didn't come here to forgive you," he said, voice quiet but firm. "I came here because the version of us that still exists in this song deserved to be heard before the world buried it under headlines." Jungkook nodded once, and then he played. The piano was soft but sharp, each note ringing out into a room that felt like it had been waiting years to exhale. Taehyung's voice came in first, unfiltered, cracked around the edges, real. He didn't try to perfect it. He let it shake. Let the pain sit in every note. And when Jungkook joined him, it didn't sound like harmony. It sounded like history. The lyrics weren't subtle. They referenced nights on rooftops, fights in dim hallways, missed calls, hidden letters, secret bruises left by silence. They sang about how love doesn't die, it gets edited out of frame. They sang about how the hardest part of losing someone wasn't the absence, but the rewriting, the lie. And when they hit the bridge, the one they built together in a tiny studio corner under flickering lights, neither of them looked at the camera. They only looked at each other and sang. "I let them erase you from my chorus so they could sell a cleaner lie, but every silence between the notes still sounds like you saying goodbye." The room fell silent as the final chord faded. No applause, just breath. And then Taehyung did something no one expected. He stood and took off his mic. "I'm done explaining myself," he said, voice calm, eyes steady. "I'm done being a controversy, a question mark, a rumor." He looked at Jungkook. "We were never a rumor. We were the reason." And he walked off camera. Jungkook didn't move, didn't follow. Just sat there, staring at the empty space Taehyung had left behind. Then he leaned into the mic one last time. "If this is where it ends," he said, barely audible, "at least now, it's honest." He stood. The screen went black. In the silence that followed, the internet shattered. The fandom erupted. Articles launched. Clips flooded every platform. Speculation turned to fact. Support flooded in, but so did criticism. Networks blacklisted them. A major brand dropped Jungkook within hours. Radio stations pulled his singles. But something else happened too. Other artists spoke up. Old interview clips resurfaced moments where Taehyung had been visibly pushed aside, where Jungkook looked haunted after award wins, where glances and silences told a story the industry tried to bury. Suddenly, the narrative wasn't about scandal. It was about truth. Weeks passed. The song, unnamed, still remained unreleased officially, but it lived on in recordings, in hearts, in the memory of that one night when nothing was held back. Then, quietly, a letter appeared on both their official fan pages, jointly signed. It read, "We may never be what we once were, but we are no longer ashamed of what we became. This isn't a comeback. It's not a farewell. It's just the truth. And finally, we're okay with letting it be seen. Thank you for hearing us, J and T." And just like that, the story changed. Not into a fairy tale, not into a tragedy, but into something braver, something real. And for the first time in years, both of them stood not as idols, not as rivals, not even as broken parts of a whole, but as men who finally said what should have been said all along.